Good morning, President Jones and members of the board. As Mr. Jones indicated, I'm going to spend the bulk of my report talking about the response that we had to COVID-19 and then the key priorities as we were working through this week by week. I'll also touch on the process for this year's healthcare premium negotiations. I know Dawn and Marta talked a bit about that, but these would be implemented for fiscal year 2021. So when we went into COVID-19, we had put together a comprehensive action plan, and the action plan was really surrounded by health and safety of our members, the health and safety of our employees, a very comprehensive communication plan out to all of the audiences, our board, the stakeholders, our members, our employees. And then the other part of the action plan was that we wanted to set a goal that we would not have degradation in any of the services that we were providing to the members. So as you heard Dawn report yesterday, California is making some progress in flattening the curve, but there are still some things that need to happen. I think the last couple of days in California, as the fair weather came about and people perhaps ventured out more than they should have, we've seen some of that data get a little bumpy. But like nearly all state agencies and so many other people around the state, we've had to adjust pretty quickly to this new reality without knowing exactly what the semblance of normal or normalcy might be and when that might be returning. And then here we find ourselves on the final morning of our virtual board meetings. And as Mr. Jones indicated, we did have, a few hiccups along the way, but I really appreciate the patience of the board and the committees as the team really worked to address those problems as quickly as they could. We had over 70 people participating either in a committee meeting or in the board meeting this morning, and those 70 people have been distributed around not only the state of California, but we actually had people contributing from other states, including Mr. Bagson. So I would like to take a moment just to thank all of the teams who have been instrumental in making the last 3 days happen. Whether that's the IT team, the Office of Public Affairs, the Board Services Unit, really appreciate all of their work. In terms of our day-to-day operations, we quickly, within the first 2 weeks of the pandemic, were able to get initially starting about 75% of our workforce working remotely or in telework arrangements. You fast forward to today, in the last few weeks, we have approximately 85% of our employees successfully working in remote locations. We do have to keep about 15% of the workforce coming into the headquarters building in Sacramento because the nature of their work does not allow them to, to provide those functions in a remote location or from their homes. These would be individuals who are receiving mail, who are running the imaging system, indexing those documents and getting them into the workflow so that the people working remotely from home have work to do. So I really want to express our strong appreciation for those members who are team members who are continuing to come in to the CalPERS building every single day. Whether they have some anxiety about that, we've done our best to alleviate as much of that as we can. And one of the things that we've done is really work closely with the custodial crew, the security team, and they've just done an outstanding job of making sure that where we have people physically working, that we do extra cleaning, extra sanitizing of those work areas throughout the day, as well as a deeper cleaning into the evening. And while our employees are on site, they of course are practicing all of the social distancing protocols that have been recommended by local and state health officials. Each morning, the executive team, and we had this protocol in place prior to COVID-19, but each morning we have a huddle of where the entire team gets together for 15 to 30 minutes just to check in. We converted those huddles over to be purely about COVID-19 and CalPERS' response to all the various issues that come up every single day. And one of the things we wanted to do each morning was to get a report out on how the core processes were functioning or operating in this remote environment. And so since then, we've actually created an automated way by which the executive team, we have a COVID-19 dashboard that takes care of primarily the processes that are facing our members. So those would be contact center statistics, retirement application processing, for example, just 2 examples there. So we do look at the call volume, and I'm happy to report that our service levels of paying 90% of retirement and survivor benefits is all done very timely, and those numbers have continued to hold strong during the remote working arrangements. And I think our teams have been really innovative. You know, sometimes it takes a crisis or something that you had not expected for innovation to really come in and solve that problem of the day. I'm just happy to report that we have a number of employees who are submitting ideas on a regular basis about how we can better serve the members or how we can have better connectivity between the teams. So I'll just give you a little bit of the data. Wait times for our customer contact center are on par with pre-COVID-19 levels and really have dropped significantly over the last week as a result of one employee idea, which I'll mention a little bit later. 45% of our retirement applications are coming in and they're being filed through, you can hear my dogs in the background, I'm sorry, through my CalPERS. And that's really been an all-time high since my CalPERS was launched back in 2011. The CalPERS health plans are ramping up telehealth since many of the elective procedures and appointments have been postponed. And as we talked about in pension and health, you know, one of the things that the committee wants us to continue to watch for is the data that would support that telehealth is an appropriate replacement for some of the on-site utilization. We've also followed through to ensure that CalPERS members in the HMO and PPO plans won't have any out-of-pocket expenses for COVID-19 testing, and then we'll also continue to coordinate with our pharmacy benefit manager, OptumRx, to ensure that our members have all of the medications that they need. So the executive team, you know, we're really proud of the team at CalPERS and how productive they've been. You know, these are employees like many of the committee and board members who are trying to balance their professional responsibilities along with these new personal responsibilities of setting their kids up for virtual online classes or education. And so we're really proud of the way that they've responded to it. So on the communication, from the beginning, as I mentioned in our action plan, we made a very strong commitment to being as open and transparent as we possibly could on the communication front. What we found out right away, you know, the number one thing that our members were most concerned about is whether there would be any kind of disruption in their payments. And, you know, our stakeholders are concerned about being able, you know, the employer stakeholders are concerned about being able to pay their contributions and to report that timely. So we wanted to make sure that we had mechanisms in place and channels in place that we could communicate very proactively as new information or decisions were made by the organization, that we were communicating that out to the stakeholder groups as quickly as we could. So one of the things that we've done internally, because our team members need to be kept very well informed. I think sometimes in the absence of strong communication or good communication, that the gaps get filled with non-factual information or get filled with, you know, kind of people's stress and real negative views. So one of the approaches we had is that we wanted to stay in contact with the entire organization, all 2,800 employees, on a daily basis, as well as having the ability for team members to ask questions directly to me, either through an email, and then also every Friday I now do a live web chat where people can send in their questions and I'll address those in a more live format. And that seems to be working really well for not only the connectivity side of it, but just keeping the anxiety and stress levels at least around the part of their lives that has to do with CalPERS and their job. Keeping, you know, information out there, I think, has really been helpful, at least based on the feedback that I've heard. And then we've also had a number of team members who have tried to, you know, do more community support. We have at least 2 individuals who I know about who are making masks, Fritzy out of our actuarial office, as well as a member of our health team. They, from their homes, are trying to support the community by, you know, making masks, dropping those masks off either at CalPERS for the people who are working on site, or donating those to healthcare facilities or to other organizations where the shortages have really been impactful. So we are seeing a lot of direct access back to our website. We put out a frequently asked questions. We sent out a member email blast, again, just addressing the general questions that were coming into the contact center. Those seem to be, the open rate on that email was extremely high. The visits coming into the website, we had 92,000 visits in March. That's about double the number from prior months, and you'll see that in the data that we provide you. And then also we're seeing a big spike in how the users are coming into the website. According to our data, direct traffic to our site has almost doubled. And what this means is that we have people actually typing in calpers.ca.gov to go directly there and not coming in from another source. And then on the employer side, as we said, we try to keep them tightly in the communication loop as much as we can. We've been doing a number of circular letters out of our employer accounts management division. That's Renee Ostrander's group. And, you know, as executive orders are coming in from the governor, we want to make sure that we can help the employers understand how those executive orders relate to the business of CalPERS. And so those circular letters have been going out, and the views on those circular letters are up by 200%. And then, you know, as far as webinars, a couple of weeks ago, we did host an employer webinar. We had over 1,700, between 1,700 and 1,800 attendees. And we had a number of the employers send in their questions in advance so that we could make sure that we address those more directly, not just in the way that we communicated verbally, but also we had put together a number of charts and graphs. Sometimes seeing it in a picture is easier to understand than to hear, you know, someone talking at you for an hour. We did get positive feedback on it. We had several of our executives who participated in it. Michael Cohen, our Chief Financial Officer, Dan Bienvenu, Scott Tarando, our actuary, Brad Pacheco out of our communications office was the facilitator. And then I just did a couple of opening remarks. We had 3 of our board members who, at the end of the Q&A period, had an opportunity to address directly some of the questions that the attendees had. I thought that worked extremely well. And we had Renee Ostrander on as well. And, you know, what's really important about, you know, Renee and her team is they get into the really technical questions. And so what we found is that there were a number of general questions about board actions and policies and risk mitigation policy and asset liability management, but then they quickly went into, well, how do I treat this from a reporting standpoint? So Renee did a really nice job of explaining how employers could do that and really encouraging people to stay in contact with us if they had any questions. That, you know, we're here to serve them. We consider them a partner in the way that we administer these benefits, and we want to be readily available to them. So just moving on to health, as you heard yesterday, our health teams are working with the health plans on the premiums for 2021. The process is moving forward. You know, we're using our data warehouse to really look at the claims data, and you know, as we're getting rates coming in, you know, we can do some validity testing on our end as well. That I think that's been really helpful. The team is working to bring rates back to the committee in June on the normal timeframe, but there could be some delays, as was noted in the PHBC meeting. On the budget, the Finance and Administration Committee did hear the fiscal year budget yesterday, and this does include a nearly 11% reduction in overall expenses, while we also allocated additional funds to support strategic initiatives around disaster recovery, around information security, and then the total fund data strategy. And that really helps us to be able to manage these assets in-house more effectively. The majority of the 11% reduction, about $200 million, comes from eliminating approximately 30 external investment managers. And this is the work that the investment team has been doing of moving some of our active mandates over into more passive mandates. And then we're also able to capture another $9 million in savings related to healthcare administrator fees. And then in terms of organizational efficiencies, we did take steps to reduce the number of our temporary help positions, while the number of enterprise-wide positions remains flat. This will be the 4th year that that number has remained flat, and that number is 2,875. And then finally, you know, I'm pleased to talk about one of our highest forms of recognition that we do here at CalPERS, called the APEX Award. APEX stands for Achieving Performance Excellence. And this week, actually this morning, we announced that there are 18 team members in this year's class of recipients. And one of the things I think we all like most about the award is that all of the nominees are nominated by their colleagues or their fellow teammates. And then recipients were recognized for the work they've done in the last year that was consistently above and beyond what the normal expectations of that position might entail. And then we'll find a way to celebrate this year's class of recipients at a later date. But in the meantime, I want to offer my congratulations to them all. Now, normally we would have had them stand up in the auditorium. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that this time, but at our next regularly scheduled meeting that we're able to have an auditorium, we'll make sure to invite those recipients for your recognition as well. And then before I report the investment performance, I'd like to address what to expect with the upcoming CalPERS events. The CBs, the CalPERS Benefit Education events in May and June, have been canceled, and we're now looking at whether we hold the July and August events. Right now, that is uncertain. As for the next board meeting scheduled for June and the board offsite in July, we don't know yet what those will look like, but we're certainly hoping that we can get everyone back into the auditorium in June or July. We will look to state and local guidance as we have been, as we've been really coordinating closely and then creating our action plan to stay in alignment. And then finally, the investment performance year to date, and this would be performance as of March 31st, 2020. The fiscal year to date return is a negative 4.1. The 1 year return is negative 0.4. The 3 year return is 4.6. The 5 year return is 4.7. The 10 year return is 7, and the 20 year return is 5. And then to close today, we do have an inspirational video that I'm hoping will work. If it doesn't work, we will send you a link after. It's fairly brief, but it's this portrait that really shares and embodies public service. And it's the newest video in our We Serve California series. And what this does is it highlights public employees and the important work that they do. This one is about a state worker named May Lee. And I can't think of a better way to end this week than on her story, which exemplifies what it means, again, to truly serve the public for the number of years that this individual has. So, James, if we could roll that video, please.
We didn't have computers. We didn't have cellular phones, calculators. In the old days, we had the comptometer, which you manually have to push the dial. We didn't have air conditioning. We didn't have nice lighting. Now you just press the button electronically, it transfers from here to there. My name is May Lee. I work for Department of General Services in the Facility Management Division. I've been working for the state since 1945, which makes it 77 years. I started public service way back when I was in high school. When I was a senior in high school, I worked in the principal's office. And I kept their ADA, which is the average attendance record, for them. I was raised, and we went to the Alton Oriental segregated school. My father had about 7 ranches, so he taught me how to keep records of all the different ranches. I learned to run the backers and add expense and keep track of the income. September 26, 1963, they called me up and said, your new department is called General Services. There was no accounting system set up. Through the year, I did all the accounting system for General Service. One of the things I'm proud of is I'm able to figure out how to get out of the red into the black on the funding, such as the Architecture Revolving Fund was $27 million in the hole. Even the auditor gave up. So I decided to take a shot at it, and I figured out what's wrong. In 5.5 years, we pulled it out. We were in the black now. There's Article 19 in the Constitution that said there was no Chinese to be hired in public work. And I wrote to the Senate and explained that that's in violation of the U.S. Constitution. So I submitted, and they asked me to visit the Senate with a special pass on May 12, 1945. In 1955, they repealed that section of the state constitution. You don't have to do crossword puzzles just to keep your brain. Volunteer, do something, and be active, and keep moving around. June 23rd, I'll be 100 years old, and I will have 77 years state service as of June 7th, so that's a long span of time.